Happiness through curiosity on the Ranveer Show. Do you think it's now time to talk about Genghis Khan?
Another great conqueror, an even greater conqueror than Alexander, who also has a similar connection with India, but a different kind of connection with India. Yeah, let's talk about Genghis Khan.
All I know is that his international conquests began at age 40.
Yeah.
So pre-age 40, he was a warlord in Mongolia, because Mongolia was a bunch of warring tribes just at it with each other. Feel free to begin the story wherever you wish.
Yeah, so just to put a caveat on that, his international conquest begin in his late 40s. Imagine that. Late 40s, you begin your international career. Before that, you're just struggling domestically. That's the kind of guy he was. So, Shri Genghis Khan, he was born in the year probably 1162 AD. And he was alive at the same time that Prithviraj Chauhan was alive in India. They were contemporaries. Okay? So that's the first way to orient ourselves as Indians, that at the time that Prithviraj Chauhan was alive in India, Genghis Khan was alive, or he had been born, or at least he was alive for some period of time in Mongolia. So Mongolia is this very interior part of Asia with an extremely harsh climate. Very extreme, very cold climate. The temperature can go to minus 30, minus 40 in winter. And Genghis Khan was the son of a small chieftain of the Borjigin tribe in Mongolia. Like you mentioned, Mongolia at that time was not a kingdom or a nation. It was just this big piece of real estate in the deep interior of Asia, where you had these small tribes who fought each other for scraps. Okay, very harsh climate, very bad conditions, very little resources available, food or whatever. Huge territory, almost empty, the steppe region, and you had to fight each other for small scraps. And this infighting among the Mongolian tribes was, you can say, encouraged by the kingdom to the south, which is the Tangut kingdom of China. At the time, there were 3 kingdoms in China. At least 3. You had the Tanguts, which is the Shishia, the Western Xia kingdom. You had the Song dynasty. You also had the Manchurian kingdom. There was a kingdom in Manchuria and so on. There was also present-day East Turkestan or present-day Xinjiang. You had the Uyghurs who ruled there. And further north from Mongolia, you had the Tatars, who are a Turkic people, closely related to the Mongols. And all this infighting between the Mongols and the Tatars was kind of engineered by the Chinese, by the Xia, by the Western Xia dynasty in China. So Genghis Khan is born 1162 AD on the banks of the Orkhon River in Mongolia. And his father is a small chieftain of the Borjigin tribe, the Blue Wolves tribe. And when Genghis Khan is about 10, 12 years old, his father dies, to make a very long story short, and his family is expelled from the tribe because his father had 2 wives. There is Genghis Khan's mother, Hoelun, and there was another lady who was married to his father before his mother. And there were 5 children, including 2 half-brothers of Genghis Khan. So 7 people were there who were dependent on one man, the chief, but he dies. Now, who will support the 7 people in this harsh climate, in this very harsh environment? So this family was thrown out of the tribe and they were left for dead. And over there, you are 7 people on your own in the winter, you are guaranteed to die. But they did not die because of the industriousness and the resourcefulness of the mother of Genghis Khan, who somehow ensured that the family somehow stays alive. And there is a period of time in which Genghis Khan is enslaved by another tribe for maybe a winter, maybe 7-8 years. We don't know exactly how long it was. It was a very, very harsh childhood that he went through. He even had to kill his own half-brother for some scraps of food because his half-brother was taking all the food and starving the rest of the family. So all of this happens, and then eventually Genghis Khan somehow survives childhood. He becomes a young adult. He has an ally. His name was Jamukha, I believe, who is his blood brother. And then he becomes the vassal of one of the major tribes. The tribe, I forget the name of the tribe, but the king, the Khan's name was Ong Khan. And his wife, and then he has a wife whose name is Borte, who there was an arranged marriage. So he has this wife, but then the wife is kidnapped by another tribe, which is his mother's tribe, in retaliation for his mother's kidnapping by his father. Okay, all these things are there. So his wife is kidnapped for a period of like a few months. He takes the help of his overlord, Ong Khan, to get his wife back. But the time his wife comes back, she's pregnant and he doesn't know who's the father. So his first son, until today, there is a question mark on his paternity. His first son's name was Jochi. So even today, no one knows whether it was Genghis Khan's son or the son of a rapist. Okay, that's how it is. Then Genghis Khan, over time, he is very ambitious. He starts building his own following. Then he fights every single Mongolian tribe, and instead of exterminating them, he brings them under his umbrella. And by the time he's in his mid-40s to late 40s, he has defeated every single Mongolian tribe, and he becomes the supreme Khan, the Genghis Khan, the Oceanic Khan. Then what happens is that he decides, as a mark of the unification of the nation, to strike back at the old enemy who for centuries had persecuted the Mongolian tribes and made them fight each other, which is the Chinese, the Xia kingdom of China. So he goes south, he crosses the great Gobi Desert, and he goes and smashes the Xia. And that consolidates, it solidifies and solemnizes his authority to rule the Mongolian nation, because he's able to defeat the Xia Empire in China. So he does that, and then he defeats. So this was in retaliation for centuries of atrocities. Unlike Alexander, who was a robber on a grand scale, Genghis Khan did this to teach the Chinese a lesson and to pay them back in kind for what they had been doing for centuries against the Mongols. And of course, he got a lot of wealth out of it, but he did not keep any of that wealth. He put that back into circulation in Mongolia. Genghis Khan was driven by a desire for justice and a desire for retaliation. So whether it is China, whether it is Karakhitai, which he conquered, which is like, at that time it was kind of north of India, north of Ladakh. There was a small kingdom called Karakhitai.
Tibet?
The Uyghur region and some part of Tibet. It was a Turkic, or you could say Tangut kind of kingdom. And they had killed one of his daughter's husbands, which is not a very smart thing to do. So that in retaliation, he conquers Karakhitai and annihilates that. And then he had sent a trade delegation to Khwarezm. So Khwarezm is present day Turkmenistan and Iran put together, and some of the other stans put together. And it was ruled by Turks. It was not ruled by Persians. So the Persians of that time, they saw their king, the Shah of Khwarezm, just the way we saw someone like Aurangzeb, we Indians. We did not see Aurangzeb as our guy. He was an oppressor. He was an occupier. Similarly, the Iranians, the Persians, they saw the Shah of Khwarezm, Shah Mahmud or whatever his name was, as a Turk, as a foreigner. So Genghis Khan had subdued China. He had subdued Karakhitai. Everything was peaceful. Now he said, let us become traders. We no longer have any enemies that can hurt us. So now let's engage in trade with the rest of the world. So he sent a trade delegation to Khwarezm, to the city of Utrar. It was on the eastern borders of Khwarezm. So he sends this trade delegation with all these trade goods and all to Utrar. And the governor of Utrar, who was a cousin or something, or a relative of the king, of the Shah, he simply confiscates all the goods and he murders the envoys of Genghis Khan. So Genghis Khan eventually comes to know about what happened. So he sends a diplomatic delegation to Khwarezm, and he demands that this governor, Inalchuk, be handed over to Mongolia so that he can be brought to justice. So once again, he tries to resort to diplomacy to solve this problem. And those governors are shaved off and they're made bald. And there were three ambassadors or three diplomats he had sent. Two of them, their beards were shaved and their heads were shaved. Third one was Muslim. He was beheaded. So Genghis Khan tries trade, doesn't work. He tries diplomacy, doesn't work. He says, okay, if that's what you want, let's have it. So he invades Khwarezm. He captures the city of Utrar. Inalchuk is captured. He says, I'll give you as much gold as you want. So Genghis Khan takes all this gold and silver, melts it and has him drink it. Have you seen Game of Thrones? That episode?
Where they melt gold and pour it on one of the guys' heads.
Yeah, he's the brother of the Khalisi, future Khalisi.
Says, here's your crown.
Here's your crown. So Inalchuk, it was inspired by what Genghis Khan did to Inalchuk, the governor of Utrar. But that was not all. That was not enough. The governor, he had requested the Shah to hand over Inalchuk to him, but the Shah also refused. So Khwarazm, the conquest of Khwarazm begins with the conquest of Otrar. The governor is made to drink molten gold and silver. The city is smashed to pieces. It is still in ruins today. Then he takes Samarkand, he takes Bukhara. Then the Shah of Khwarazm runs. He runs all the way and he's pursued by Genghis Khan's army. And he takes refuge in one of the islands in the Caspian Sea where he dies of pleurisy. But his son Jalaluddin escapes southwards with his entire family, with his mother and whoever else. So Genghis Khan then starts pursuing this guy, Jalaluddin. And Jalaluddin comes south. He crosses Gandhar. And he comes to the banks of the Indus where Genghis Khan catches up with him. And then there is the great battle of the Indus, in which the army of Jalaluddin is destroyed and smashed to pieces. And Jalaluddin abandons his family, his mother, his wife, his ladies. He takes his horse and he jumps into the Sindhu river, Indus river, and he crosses the Indus and he enters India. And Genghis Khan watches. He says, let it be. I've destroyed his army. He's done. He's no longer going to be relevant. And so Genghis Khan was exactly where Alexander was about 1500 years ago. And he had the opportunity with his army with him to invade India, which at that time was the world's richest kingdom, civilization, empire, whatever you want to call it. Europe during Alexander's time was an impoverished land. Persia and India were prosperous, rich. During the time of Genghis Khan, India was, why did everybody invade India? The Turks, the Mongols, the Mughals, not the Mongols, Mughals, and so on. British, Europeans, they came for the riches. Genghis Khan is there with the greatest army the world has ever seen. And he only has to cross the Indus River and he can have all of India. And he's going to win. He's that good. At that time, northern India was ruled by Iltutmish, who was one of the sultans of the small Delhi Sultanate, whose daughter was Razia Sultan, Iltutmish. So Genghis Khan chose to go back. He chose to turn around. His job was done. He had destroyed the army of Khwarazm. And he was not motivated by wealth or conquest or plunder. He was motivated by justice. And he brought whoever had wronged him and his people to justice. So he spurned the opportunity, a once in a lifetime opportunity, to cross the river Indus and conquer India. He went back because the Chinese had rebelled against him and he had come to know about that. So then he goes back all the way to China and restarts the conquest of China. He smashes Beijing. He flattens Beijing. Flattens it completely. Okay? And there was this battle before that, before he reaches Beijing. It is called the Battle of the Badger's Mouth Pass. It's a place called Yehuling, north of Beijing. And if you look at the map today, there are two hills between which you have to come if you want to reach Beijing. Beijing, the northern part of Beijing is protected by these mountain ranges. And there are these two hills between which the Chinese army had placed forts. There is a river between them. And that's where the big battle happened between the defenders of Beijing and the army of Genghis Khan. And the Chinese army was smashed to pieces over there. And if you look at the map today, the satellite images, there is no reminder, there's no memorial over there of what happened. The Chinese are very insecure about what Genghis Khan did to them. So Genghis Khan destroys the Chinese army over there at Yehuling, north of Beijing. He marches to Beijing. The city had big walls at the time. He goes to this place called Yanqing. He reaches Beijing and there is this big siege of Beijing. And eventually his army takes Beijing and flattens the whole city. And then he once again goes back to the Xixia Empire in the western part of China. And he's fighting them. But in the year 1227, for some reason, he leaves his body. He dies. And we don't know why he dies. Okay. And the Mongols, they maintained a record, a chronicle of the days of Genghis Khan. It is today called The Secret History of the Mongols, in which it is not mentioned how he died. So there are all these stories about how he died. Maybe his local Chinese wife killed him, or he died of wounds in a battle. Lots of different stories. And then there is the question of where was he buried? And the Western historians and the Western media are really interested in finding the burial place. But they're never going to find it. I promise you that they will never find it. Even the burial place of Alexander is kind of not known. It is probably in Alexandria, Al-Iskandria in Greece, in Egypt, but it's not been definitively identified. So two great men from the great man theory of history. Genghis Khan, way greater than Alexander, way greater, and a much better person. He didn't. Of course, see, historians put this figure. I don't know what figure they put. 30 million, 50 million of people that Genghis Khan killed. Alexander would have killed no less. And Genghis Khan did not slaughter people just for the fun of slaughtering them. If he did slaughter some cities, which he did nothing which Alexander did not do. And he did this as a psychological thing, so as to ensure that the other kingdoms he would capture, he would invade later, would just open the gates so that nobody has to be killed, and which happened in Samarkand and Bukhara. At least Samarkand for sure, or Bukhara, one of these two. Okay, this is the readers can look up the actual history. I don't remember all the dates, all the specific locations, but that's what happened. So overall, from my estimation, Genghis Khan was a far greater conqueror and a far better human being than Alexander. And the reason why he is so reviled is because he is not a white guy. He was not a white guy, and his descendants conquered various parts of Europe as well. They smashed Russia. Russia was under the Mongol yoke for a couple of centuries, and so on. Long story short, but yeah, that's about Genghis Khan. So very different person, very different character, very different historical figure from Alexander. In my estimation, the much greater conqueror and the much better human being. If he had actually decided to come into India, India would have had a totally different history.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip from the Ranveer Show, we've uploaded a ton of other clips related to a ton of other topics. So explore the channel because there's something for everyone.